we're going to start by actually working with this picture. It is just a random picture I generated with Flux the other day. But the reason I want to do this one specifically is because it's fairly matching in colors. So that can be an issue when you in Paint. Like if we would generate something in the sky here, maybe we get like a red balloon, and that's going to just look weird maybe in this scene. But we'll get back to that in a bit. So I have launched ThinkDiffusion. I am on Forge, that Ultra machine. I have selected Flux up here, and I've made sure that I have a Flux model and a 4 now, version 2. You can use like Flux Dev FP8 or the 16, but then you have to manually select the text encoders. I use the NF4 just so I don't have to do that, and it's going to be easier for you to get started if you're new to this. We're going into the image to image tab, and then we have these tabs down here. So we have the sketch, we have the Inpaint sketch. So those are the ones that we're going to be working with today. And they do different things, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But first, let's look at some of the Inpaint stuff. So I've actually just drag and drop my image in here. You can just do the same, doesn't matter. And when we're in here, we can paint. And what we're painting is what we want to change, right? But we also have a lot of options down here. So I'm just going to give you a blob there, and I'm just going to show you these, because these options are some of the most important for Inpainting. And this decides what goes into this area before what you want to see. Does that make sense? I'll show you. So I'm just going to do a quick generation here. Now, if I have original selected here and I generate with a denoising of 0, which means that we're not giving this anything to work with, we're just going to see the original mask content. And original means you see what's already there, which also means that you can't see anything. Nothing's going on here. And if you change that, for example, to latent noise, you will clearly see that now we're introducing noise into the image. So here we have latent noise or latent noise, however we're going to pronounce that. We have fill, and that will introduce colors here that it finds around the image. So you can see it gets like similar colors, but they're different from original because original takes what's exactly below there. So why am I telling you all this? Well, it depends on what you want to see in your image, right? So let's say that if I wanted to generate something in this area and I select original and I say, oh, I need a spacecraft, for example, let's say spacecraft, and we're raising the denoising maybe a little bit, then it only has these clouds to work with. So that's not going to give us much of a spacecraft. Well, we got a little one here, but it's not optimal. So what you would want to do, and let me show you this in another example here, is we go into sketch, for example. So you can just either go to sketch, drag it, or we can send it to sketch. That's going to take a few seconds, but it will save everything that's in your image, right? Here, we can actually paint stuff. So let's pick some colors. Let's pick them from the scene here. I actually changed my mind. I don't want a spacecraft anymore. I want some kind of a stone sculpture. Just expand this mountain here. And let's do something with that. So the reason we're painting this is that now when we use original, this is what it's working with. So we can create our own objects or how we want them to look like, right? And then we're sending that to Inpaint, and now we can paint around this area. Now, if you're not new to Inpaint, you might say, hey, Seb, why aren't you using Inpaint Sketch instead? Because we used Sketch, right? And we got this. Well, if you're using Inpaint Sketch and painting, then this area would be not only what we're painting, but also our mask. Might sound a little confusing. The reason we're doing this is that we can then paint our mask around our object. So it gives us some space to work with around that. And then we're using mask blur, in this case, about 4 pixels. So it kind of blurs the edges a little bit. So this you can increase or decrease if you wanna, if you're getting like lines here. But let's put something in. Let's do stone sculpture made out of a mountain. Now you have a lot of options here, right? Most of these you don't need to worry about because when you've selected Flux up here, the default settings are good. What you need to set are this. So let's change this to 1024 by 1024. We're also changing this to only masked. That means that this size will be, well, sort of this area. So this area will be 1024 by 1024. So now that we generate this, let's increase this to something like 0.6. Let's do 2 images. You will generate only this part of the image, and you will see that soon in the preview. And why are we generating only this part instead of the whole picture? Well, then you can go into the image sort of. So you're generating more detail into that area. So when you're generating, you're getting more pixels into the area. And then it's kind of copy pasting that square back into the image. So you're not getting like more pixels in this area when you're finished, but you are getting more pixels in this area when you're generating. So this is a high res area when you're generating. So you can introduce more details. This is both good and bad. Like if we do it with the people here, they're going to look more detailed, and that's great. If we do it with this little mountain here in the background, it might look weird if this is just super detailed because this is off in the distance. So what you can do with that, and let me show you here. Let's say that we're happy with one of these. Well, this looks pretty cool. It's I guess this is more of a sculpture and this is more of a mountain. But let's just continue on from this. And if we just reset here and zoom in and paint over here, let me show you with an example. Let's break this. Let's call this Castle Tower. We're going to keep these settings and we're going to increase the denoising to 1. So that now we're changing everything. So 0 means basically no change. Remember from the beginning when we looked at these options. Now we're changing everything. And we're doing it also zoomed in. So this isn't going to look fantastic. You're going to get Castle Tower, whatever Flux deems is a Castle Tower, but it's going to look out of place. And you'll see in a second when these two generations have finished. This is why you need to learn some of these settings. Here you can see this isn't looking great at all, right? So in that instance, you can actually go back and use Inpaint area whole picture. Then instead of our little square here, we will use all of this. And then you might be thinking, okay, I'm just going to generate here. It's going to look fantastic. Well, this is what most people get wrong when they try to replicate this. They do this and they yell, Seb, it's not working. I'm just getting this. It's a weird squashed up square now. Yes, because when we're changing the whole picture, we have to remember to change the size because we're still working in a 1024 by 1024. So then we have to either remember what size this image is, or we can press the little ruler here and we'll get the size of the image. So now that we generate this new whole picture, it will generate at, well, almost 1900 by 1080. Now, this will obviously take longer as it's a high resolution, but it's a great way to work with areas where you don't need a lot of detail. And as you can see here now, our little castle tower is a completely new structure, but it's blending in better with the background. And that works also if you're using images where you have a high or low, high or low, well, depth of field where you have background blur and you need to inpaint with blur. You can use this technique. And I have a long video on YouTube if you want to go super in depth. We're not going to have time to do all of that right now. But if you want to keep learning, check that out for sure. So let's say we're happy with that. You can, again, drag it to the left here. And we're sort of iterating. So now we've changed this part, we've changed that part. Let's say that we want to add some detail into the characters here. We can inpaint over them. Now the area that you are inpainting, it's not crucial how that it's like perfect. You don't have to follow the lines completely. With that said, sometimes you will see this edge, but we can work with that. And how you do that is by changing the mask blur. And if that isn't enough, you can also use soft inpainting. We're not going to use that now, but it's good to do sometimes. Gonna head back to 1024 and only masked. Remember, we're now zooming in to that part. I'm gonna lower the denoising a little bit, 0.6. We want to change this, but we want to retain some of what's back there, right? So let's say futuristic surveyor astronaut, maybe. Let's do 2 images. I usually try to do at least 2 images. Sometimes I do 4, because even when you do 2 images, you can get 2 wildly different results. And if you're just doing 1, you might think that, oh, this didn't work. Maybe my settings are off. Well, maybe you just need a second generation. So that's why I most of the time try to do 2. And here I got, actually here I got the person here, and I got an extra one here in the background, which I think is pretty cool. And this one, the character turns towards this side, but I kind of like this one. So why am I doing this? Why am I painting that just to change that person, which was, looking pretty good already? Well, the reason is because now this character is more detailed than this character. And that's going to make a huge difference on stuff like hands or faces, or where you can actually see the detail, especially if you're doing like large images. Now, this is a fairly small image in comparison. It's just 1920 by 1080. But if you're doing even bigger, you'll for sure see extra detail. So I'm just dragging the right one back to the left side to make sure that we're saving. Because if I start inpainting something else now, we're not going to save the changes that we did. Sometimes I just also go and drag to my desktop to save the image if I mess something up, so I can go back to a step that I want to do. So let's say that we want to change this one here. This one, I mean, it looks cool from a distance, right? But you can see it's not that detailed. So we're just gonna add some stuff here. This is a mask. Make sure that you're not leaving anything outside of the mask. So like the little lines here, if you leave them outside, the black outside here, it might look weird and just have little dots all over the place. Let's do like spacecraft. You don't have to do intricate prompts when you're in painting. You can if you want to, if you're looking for very specific results, but most of the time I don't think it's necessary. Again, we're using only mask, so we're zooming in, and we're using 1024 by 1024. All of the other settings here, we're using Euler, simple, 20 steps. These are default for Flux. You can change them if you're an advanced user. Do you have to? Well, most of the time, you don't. Let's run this at 0.6 again. So this is a good value if you're looking to introduce changes while still retain some of what was there already. Sometimes you want to completely save what was there, you just want some more detail into it, and then you might need to lower this like a 0.2 or 0.3, depending on the size that you're using, right? And here you can see we're getting new parts in, right? So we're getting a more detailed spacecraft, but it's not looking exactly like the old one. So I think this is a good opportunity to check out some of the questions, if I can just get that up somewhere. Rubens Mao asks, can you Inpaint from a real photo? Can you demonstrate? Well, yes, you're using exactly the same technique. It doesn't matter if it's a real photo or if it's a semi-illustration photo like this. You're using the same stuff, the same, basically the same settings, the same workflow. You might need to, well, for photorealism, you're not going to need to prompt differently. If you're using a very painterly style or an anime style, you may want to change some of your prompting for that. Can actually see if I have a photo we could do. So I'm just going to save. Let's save this desktop. So I have a photo here, right? I actually used this for my Inpainting video. And it doesn't really matter what kind of image it is. You can do anything. And I remember for this one specifically, we painted in a red ketchup bottle, I think. So let's see, we can add some softness because as you can see in this image, the background is very blurred. Let's do it like this. Sending that back to Inpaint. And now there's some reflection here. So I want to paint outside of this and also a little below here. Christopher is asking what checkpoint you're using, and I'm currently using Flux Dev NF4 version 2. The model works the same way as non-Inpaint model, Stable Diffusion. Yeah, I think like for Flux specifically, the base model is amazing at Inpainting. I don't think Inpainting model is necessary at this time. Let's see, ketchup bottle. Let's change this to whole picture. Let's see the size here. Let's try 0.6 and see what we get. We might need to tell it that it's a blurred ketchup bottle in the prompt, but let's see what happens. Remember, when you're in painting, it's not always about just getting the perfect result from your first generations. It's iteration, iteration, iteration. Maybe you're happy with a result or semi-happy. You can take that, drag it that in there, because now you're closer. Now it's not just the red blob I painted. Now you have something that resembles a bottle. And now you can use that, decrease the denoising, and iterate on that part. So seeing our result here in a second, now you can see that this version is more closely resembling what we had on the left. That's because we decreased our denoising strength. So if you missed that from the beginning, 0 denoising means no change. 1 denoising means full change. Most of the time, you want to be like 0.2, 0.8, somewhere in between there. 0 you're never using. That's just for demonstration purposes. And 1 is, I mean, sure, if you want to change everything, but most of the time you want to retain some part so you get like a resembling of the image that was there already. And looking at this now, I mean, sure, it's a very large ketchup bottle, but it catches the same kind of blur that was there. There's a little inconsistency here, so I would want to run a couple more generations to get that fixed. And probably I would repaint this and make a smaller ketchup bottle because it's a huge blob of red right now. But this is a way you can do it even with photorealism. Now, if it were not blurred, I would probably use only masked and then 1024 by 1024 to get some detail into that. Looks like a big candle. Yeah, sure. It kind of does. So let's look over some more of the questions here. Oh, there's a lot. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, Matt also said everything is also saved in your Forge outputs folder. So goes Forge outputs, then it's going to be an account name, and this the today's date, and all the images are available here if you're using ThinkDiffusion. Does this support EXR format, 32-bit image and 4K image? It doesn't support EXR or 32-bit as far as I know. You can work with 4K images, so there's really not a limit to resolution. I don't think you can run 32-bit and not EXR either. So it's gonna have to be like JPEG or PNG. And Prince asks, so this inpainting is fine for pony-based checkpoints. Yeah, it doesn't matter like what the image was created with. And you can have a Flux image, and I could paint with Inpaint with Stable Diffusion 1.5 or Excel or Flux, and you can mix and match. As soon as the work is on the image, so to speak, you can go use another model. Doesn't really matter. Rodney asked, does it work if I compost an image over another one, like a cap on a table roughly, and a master shadow, or where it should be for inpainting that with Forge to make it blend better? So if I'm understanding you correctly, so you would kind of photo bash. Let's say that I go into Photoshop, I just paint something here, and maybe it's a shadow down here, and then I mask that. That would work, and that's a great way to do it. So the sketch brush here, that's very crude. If you have a tool where you can, well, photo bash, I would do that. So like take a picture of an airplane, put that in, and then mask around that and get it to blend with the image when you're in painting. Oh, Christopher says you can actually use EXR with some modification, either via new node in Comfy or modification to Forge. I assume there's an extension then. So that's cool. I don't think it's available base, so you'd have to find something in the extensions list. I don't have experience with that, but I'm sure one could Google that fairly quickly. So feel free to put any more questions in the chat. I think we have covered much of the basics with inpainting and some of the more advanced techniques. of how you can, well, get your images looking good with inpainting or introduce more stuff into the image. Yeah, Matt's, as Matt says in the chat, all extensions and nodes that are available can be installed on ThinkDiffusion, just like a local machine. So I think if there are no more questions right now, I would probably hand it over to Matt or Aishna, whoever wants to.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, Matt can go ahead. But thanks, guys, for joining. And we just wanted Matt to come in for 2 minutes and just talk about like our TD Edge program, and he'll just give you a little bit of an overview about that.
And just to know that, like, if you're looking for any additional help, more info on Inpainting or anything else, as Aishna said, we do have one-on-one coaching and training with our TD Edge program. So if you have any specific challenges or any projects that you're trying to figure out, you've seen any techniques online that you're trying to replicate or just apply them to a project or your business, please reach out. We can definitely help solve your problems, upskill, etc. So yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time and being with us and learning what's said.
There's 1 or 2 more questions in chat if you wanted to quickly take them.
I saw something from Art13 Beck who wanted some changes to different color hairstyle and change the mug and stuff like that. That is actually, I did some of that stuff in my Flux Inpainting video where I worked with that mug and changed it to a black diamond, stuff like that. Apart from that, I don't see any more specific questions, but if you have them, please point them out and I'll try to answer.
Yeah, I think that was the one we wanted. Yeah.
Cool. So thank you, everyone. Had a good time. Always love. Actually, Inpainting is one of my favorite features when it comes to AI, and it's just so powerful. So if you want to learn something, learn Inpainting, because whether you're using like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, Flux, the Inpainting you can do in a tool like Forge is amazing. It's just amazing. And it's much better than the Photoshop Inpainting because I've tried that too. And it just gives you weird textures. There, I said it.
It's also seems a little therapeutic for you too. You're kind of like making happy clouds, as you're going, and it sounds like you're relaxed and having fun.
Oh,
So
yeah, for sure. It's one of my most happiest times when I'm doing AI work.
next webinar, everyone tune in. We're gonna get Seb some Bob Ross hair. So don't miss it.
If you send it, I'll wear it.
Okay. Overnight to Sweden. Here we come.
Take care, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you so much, guys. You again.